Me. Hello, Jackie and Stella. Hello, Linda.
Good afternoon, or just before. Good morning still. We're being recorded, which is a bit odd because Graham's just, oh, I don't know who's running it today, but someone started it and they've disappeared. So we're being recorded. So no swearing. Hmm. So I don't know where they are. They probably just started it and went off to make a cuppa or something.
I'm just about to drink mine too.
Oh, lovely. I see the AI light is flashing. Oh, I can't bear this AI being pushed on us. Oh, I'm so resistant to it. Can't bear it. Can't bear it. It's been turned on by default, maybe. We'll soon find out. How's your morning gone, Stella?
All right, thank you. Fine, yes.
You been
Yeah.
at home or you been out and about?
I've been at home. I'm sort of looking after my mum a little bit, so
Oh,
yeah.
that's lovely.
I'm
How
also
is she doing?
studying. Uh,
Oh,
she's all right. She's still in bed, but she's 91. But yeah, she's fine.
yeah.
I'm just so I thought I could fit this in between, getting meals ready and everything.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. And what are you studying at the moment?
Um, it's a 1 year course, foundation course in Western herbal medicine. So it's really interesting. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. How far are you into it?
I'm third of the way through. Started
Yeah,
in September, so it sort of balances what I've got, going on
yeah,
here. So
yeah. How lovely. How lovely. So I'm guessing you'll be out regularly foraging then, and you'll be able to collect plants and know what they are and what to do with them. Is that right?
yes, well, I'm extremely lucky because my partner runs what it's called herb pharmacy. So he grows herbs. So I he's in Herefordshire, so I do have some because I'm in
Yeah.
Birmingham at the moment, but
Oh,
I do have access to
yeah.
herbs and yeah, it's lovely.
That's great. That's great. I did a sort of it wasn't quite well, it was a bit of foraging, but it was also sort of plant and herb medicine walk last year. And it was just amazing, all this stuff around us that's in the rest of nature that we just ignore. We walk by and we see, sometimes think they're weeds or stuff, and we
Yeah.
don't realize how vital they were. And of course, money took over. So people stopped harvesting what was natural. They started making false things. Hello, Graham.
Good
Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Stella, and
morning,
Jackie in the
Graham.
background.
Hello.
Graham, I see we're already being recorded. Can that be turned off just until we agree what we're going to do?
Sure.
Thank you. Do you have any idea who might? Oh, here's Mike. Hello, Mike.
Must be an easy way of doing this.
Hi,
Hi, Mike. Nice to see you. Or I do see you now. Good afternoon.
good
No, but still
afternoon.
good morning. Still good morning. And then when we come back,
Yeah.
great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming here, doing the formal intro. So today we're going to talk about the work that reconnects, and some of this will be new to some of you. And I've also for this talk and session woven in a bit of climate psychology. So I've got some slides to share, and I'm going to talk them through, and then we'll ask. There'll be some questions, and then you can go into small groups, into pairs, and have a few minutes in pairs to think about this. Come back out, discuss that. If I then do any more input, I might then ask to put the recording back on. So you okay with that? So just we'll kick off with this. So and I want to be able to see you all. So why can't I see you all at the moment? Okay, share. There we go. Don't like to not only to see not nobody. So the work that reconnects is an introduction. So I want you just to start this session to take a minute, if you will, to bring some to mind something, someone, or somewhere that makes you feel glad to be alive. And as you do that, you might just notice your breathing shifts, your whole body might even shift, and you might even be smiling as you think of it. It, somewhere, someone, something. And we'll be revisiting that when you go into your breakouts, and you might want to tell someone what came to mind when you thought about this. So the session aims today are to introduce the main ideas and the frameworks of the work that reconnects, and for you to consider how it might benefit you and your team or your community. And as I said, optional to give you the chance to experience it for yourselves, a little of it. So what I'll do, and it just is worth mentioning about this idea of doing climate work, which I know we all do. You see there the cartoon on the right. My desire to be well informed is currently at odds with my desire to stay sane. Whoa, and what's been happening in the last couple of weeks and 24 hours, it's just, how do you stay sane in this world? How do you not switch off? And the whole session really is thinking about how we switch off and the impacts of that, and how we can not switch off but still stay sane. So doing climate work, this is just really to land it really, is understanding the science and facing the reality is emotionally, psychologically and physiologically demanding. Anyone who's doing this work and who's engaging with it is going to be impacted in some way at some level, emotionally, psychological or physiologically. And of course, this we now know so much more about the impacts of trauma, inherited, genetic and trauma and lived trauma on our bodies as well as our minds. We are all connected. We're an ecosystem in ourselves. So we know this work is demanding on many levels. And of course, the impacts are amplified when we meet resistance. You know, we're trying to convert people, engage people, galvanize people from others, or when we feel alone, and the impacts are amplified. And it's worth mentioning that getting it, and we know what we mean by getting it because you're here, is a constant process of assimilation. New data and warnings coming by the days. We've not only had the Trump thing going on, we've just seen the government's latest published report on risk factors and significant dangers for the UK. It's very quietly slipped into the government website. It was released yesterday. It's not been announced, instead of which the Ed Miliband has announced some stuff on green homes. So we know that there's some very heavy data out there, and these warnings are coming in by the day. So it's not like you've had something big happen and you can get over it. This is every day in different ways for people all around the world, of course. And so I believe that care is not a luxury, but it's a necessity, both for ourselves, and it's a responsibility to others as to take it on board. You know, if a broadcaster showed a horror film, you'd expect them to say, this is a horror film and here's the watershed time. And if somebody does a BBC, if they have some news, they say, they give a trigger warning. So I think we have a responsibility when we communicate as well to others, rather than just blurt out, you know, do you know that we're doomed, which we might not be, by the way. And so I'll signpost some resources at the end. And let's just help you to land in the room is just to say your name and what brought you here today. I know you know each other, but it's always fun to do that. What brings you here? So what's your name? Where are you coming in from? And what brought you here today?
I'll start and I'll say that I live here. It's great collaborations. Banter sessions are my anchor activity, and I must say it has been an extremely reassuring activity, because I'm amazed to find how many really talented and powerful people there are around the country working on things at parish council level that are really uplifting. It's actually my way of finding out a bit of sanity.
That's great. Lovely to hear, Graham.
My name's Stuart. I've been with the great collaboration, I think, since its inception.
Yep.
I remember getting a call from Andrew shortly after I met him. And he just called for volunteers. Anyone could spend half an hour a week helping him out. And that has morphed into half your life. But there you go.
Great.
And I do appreciate Graham's concerns. Obviously, living on an isolated island, he is at great risk from climate changes.
Thanks, Stuart. Anyone else?
Well, I'm here just because I thought it sounded interesting and it rang a bell from something that I came across a long time ago. So I thought it would be interesting to remember it.
Great.
Yeah, I can go next. So I'm Penny. I'm from Weymouth, from Climate Hub. I sort of check in every now and with this, and a bit resonating with Graham. It's good to come into these things and you realize how much sort of connection is going on around the country. I know Linda's doing a talk for the CEC network this evening. It's like, oh, I thought I'd got the wrong one and got muddled up, but yeah, I might see you on that one as well, Linda.
Great.
And the reason I'm here is really because of the climate stuff. I work with alongside activists, some of whom are actually quite in difficult places because of the work they've done. They're not well. And we're looking locally at how we can push out the national emergency briefings in Dorset. And, you know, one of the concerns, and maybe we'll cover this, sorry, it's a bit of a long check-in, is it is a worry about what we share and how it will land. And I really feel that the time for being careful around that is over. We have got to share this stuff and it is uncomfortable. So the important thing is knowing how we manage that and how we can help people. And those of us who have been around it long enough, some of us at least have found ways. We've found, you know, our medicine in the community in different ways. And I think we've got a big role to play in holding the space for others as they get it.
Great. Thanks, Penny.
I would like to say thank you for mentioning the national emergency briefing. I'm amazed at how many people, even concerned about climate and the environment, it's completely passed them by. And the mainstream media did virtually nothing on it. I think there was an article in The Guardian, but that was about it as far as I could see.
Right. We're going to come back to that because I think it's really relevant for the session. Thanks, Stuart, for raising that.
I'm Stella. I'm currently in Sutton, Sutton Coldfield, but I live in Herefordshire. I just feel a bit out of the loop at the moment, and I was going through my emails, and I just thought that, you know, I just wanted to get back into thinking about climate issues and things like that. Thanks.
Great.
I'm Mike. I run the Hay Community Resilience Initiative, and Graham gave me an opportunity to talk about it a couple of years ago, and that talk cleared the path to us actually getting money, which was fantastic. And I'm also working with Linda. We have 3 pillars: one, to become self-sufficient in locally grown food by 2030, one, to generate and become self-sufficient in community energy by 2035. And the middle pillar, which holds it all together, is to do with addressing mental well-being in the community. And Linda is very kindly working with us in order to come up with a training program to train trainers who will train other people in the community to be able to identify those of us that are feeling a bit down or slightly depressed or slightly anxious, and find ways of teaching us how to communicate with them in such a way that we can engage them either in activities we're doing or support them through however they're feeling. And I mean, it's going to be quite exciting to see what that looks like, Linda, when we get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't know we were definite. I'd heard that so I'm looking forward to a conversation with you. That's going to be good.
Yeah, I'll get in touch and catch you up. I mean,
Brilliant.
it's been a nightmare the last month, but anyway,
That's great.
fantastic.
Andrew, anything you want to say just to land?
Yeah, I'm live on the edge of the Somerset Levels, and that's been subject to quite a lot of activity because of nutrient pollution, and stemming from a High Court action, a Supreme Court action when we were part of the EU about 10 years ago. And I seem to be the sort of citizen scientist in Somerset, and I get sort of consulted on. I've never been consulted so much in my life, which is interesting because I've been a professional consultant, and I've been involved with quite a number of the councillors in Somerset and Somerset Council over the whole question of the pollution of the Somerset Levels. And I just keep an eye on what Graham's doing because a lot of useful stuff comes through this session on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here now.
Lovely. Well, welcome one and all. That's great. Good. So we're going to go back to the slides. So I'll do a bit of a talk and share some slides, and just if you've got questions, if you wouldn't mind writing them down just as bullet points, because then we can come to them, because I'll do a few slides at a time. It's not a massive slide thing, but it helps us to sort of it also helps people who have different needs. Some people like to hear the spoken word. Some people also need to see something written, but there's not a lot of, they're not text rich, and there's no charts, no graphs. You'll be really pleased to hear. And the session is aimed to be resourcing of you. It's not intended to be distressing in any way at all, but I will be flagging up resources at the end. So here we go. And just to point on that, Stuart, I'm also working with the National Emergency Briefing team and also Penny on how we can best galvanise and communicate and help people facilitate really lovely spaces, because if we don't get the soil right, you can plant anything in it and it won't take. So we're focusing on that kind of a philosophy, as how do we create the right conditions for people to feel held and contained and ready to engage with this in a way they haven't done before, because we've tried everything, not everything, but we've tried a lot and it's not been working. So we have to do something different. So I'm working with them and the team and Mike and all of those people. So there we go. And the brilliant Utopia team who are doing incredible climate communications work. So back to the slides. Right. It's funny, I keep going to a different default view today. It's very odd. It doesn't normally happen. So there we go. Understanding the client work, understanding the context of this. So what is the Work That Reconnects? Well, it arose from the 1970s from Joanna Macy, whose name you probably know well. And the work was originally called Despair and Empowerment. And Joanna was around in the 70s when nuclear was a real threat. Who says it's not now? Nuclear was a very real and present threat, and she worked a lot with activists. And she noticed and she's a Buddhist and an eco-philosopher and a scholar. And she'd noticed how easy it was, not easy, but how people were getting burnt out, how exhausting it is when you're fighting systems of power that make you feel small, when you're trying to manage and deal with and challenge oppression, when you feel despair and you don't know what else to do. And she knew that we're in this for the long haul. So the Work That Reconnects came out of the despair and empowerment work in conjunction with many people. She's known as the root teacher because she really did, bring the roots of it, and then lots of other people developed it. And I trained during COVID. I was looking for something different because I was talking at the time about climate science. I was trying to get leaders to take it in, listen to this, listen to the science. And that wasn't working for me or for them. So, and I'm a therapist, as you probably know, I'm a therapist and a coach. I'm a time to think consultant and faculty member. So I teach how to create conditions for people to think well. And I've done a lot of work around trauma and a lot of work around facilitating groups. So it all kind of came together for me very beautifully, I hope. So it's developed to overcome despair because these are times which can push us into despair. And when we feel despair, we can get paralyzed. We can get emotionally stuck, psychologically stuck, and we lose our creativity. It helps to foster connection. We live in fragmented times, in fragmented societies, and we're going to need each other more than ever before. So it helps to foster connection. It helps as well to reframe pain in a pain avoidance society. Now, of course, there are people with physical pain due to illnesses, but as on the whole, one could say, particularly in the Western world, we don't like psychological, emotional pain. We self-soothe ourselves with alcohol, with drugs, with dopamine hits on social media, and we try to do it. We do anything to avoid feeling pain. But actually, there is a lovely side to pain, and we're going to look at what that actually is. So if you wanted to reframe pain as something that's really to be welcomed, because it's alerting us to something really important and flagging up that we do have massive capacities to care. And she also wanted to unlock the sense that we can have inherently of power with during those times, and then and now, power over often feels like the predominant power in our lives. But actually we can have power with, and it reminds us of that. And she wanted to mobilize people for what she called the Great Turning, which was turning away from an industrial, exploitative, extracted, life-damaging society to a much more regenerative, life-affirming one. And so and we're going to look a bit more at the Great Turning shortly. So that's how it came about. And what is it then? It's a set of practices and tools which help us to explore the world and our relationship with it so that we can bring about systemic change collaboratively and effectively. And what it does, and I can vouch this for myself, is support people to shift their hearts and minds from feeling isolated and despairing to having a sense of participation, that there is something we can do and there is a way we can be together in facing these many contextual challenges. And it is used all around the world. And we'll see shortly the kind of practices that it draws upon. And it's not a one-off event, because what we're experiencing is not a one-off event. We're experiencing multiple daily traumas. And we've adding those on top of the traumas that we were born with, the traumas that we inherited, the traumas that our cultures create. And so it's a journey that benefits regular revisiting. And it's a practice you can apply every day. There's a spiral journey, which when I remember to, and it's not every day I remember to, but I start my day off by just 15 minutes going through a spiral on my own. And it's not a spiral that goes downwards. It's not a spiral of despair. It's a spiral that gets me somewhere new every time. And the key really feeling behind this is that we're not turning into our pain, because it's very hard to turn into. It's hard to imagine how bad things are and how bad they will get. And Jana knew this then. And she said, yet of all the dangers we face, from climate chaos to nuclear warfare, none is so great as the deadening of our response. And you might recognize this yourself in the groups you're with, in yourself, when you like to have I call it a mental spa, a day when I just don't want to think about it, an hour when I just don't want to think about it. But none is so great as the deadening of our response, because you can't deal with something that you're not facing. And this is a very well-known thing, but as a society, and we've got the luxury at the moment, a lot of the time, of being able to turn away and deaden our response. But Jana says beautifully, the refusal to feel takes a heavy toll. Not only is there an impoverishment of our emotional and sensory life, flowers are dimmer and less fragrant, our loves less ecstatic. But this psychic numbing also impedes our capacity to process and respond to information. It's a bit like if you've got a large member of family that represents all the different characters in your family, and half of them aren't speaking, half of them aren't talking or engaging or connecting. You've not got the whole range of experience there. And the energy that we expend in pushing down our despair is then, of course, diverted. We've only got capacity to do so much intracyclically. And if we're pushing despair and turning away from it, we're also pushing away our capacity for creativity, for more creative uses. It depletes our resilience and imagination needed for fresh visions and strategies. Anybody that's been to Caernarfon in Wales will know, in Snowdonia, will recognise this bridge, which Caernarfon is at the foothills of Snowdonia. It's an eco-village where you can just really soak up nature. So the price of emotional numbness, I mean, just look at that picture. Isn't that uncomfortable? That grey blob. It makes me feel uncomfortable just looking at it. There's no clarity. I can't look at it for long. It's what emotional numbness does it to it. It takes away our capacity for engaging. It takes away our capacity for clarity. And we know this today from modern day neuroscientists and therapists. The attempt to escape from pain is what creates more pain. That's Gabor Mate, who's a world leading expert in trauma in our bodies. So what's going on behind the scenes? We're just going to look, some of you know this already because I've done these talks and some of you will be here. I'm briefly going to talk about psychological defences, but this is not a climate psychology talk. But we can't talk about the work that reconnects without acknowledging what's going on to push us away. So these are primitive strategies. They're shock absorbers for the truth. They're protective processes that stop us, that try to stop us from looking at difficult feelings and having difficult feelings. There are around 40 identified. We use them all the time, but many have come into, they're on steroids right now around climate change, and they're similar to the ones we experience around death and illness. And of course, they can prevent us from perceiving or coping with reality because they're numbing us and protecting us. Psychological defences normally soften as we mature and we adapt to knocks of life. And they're normal, we all have them. We all have times when we don't want to think about that. And sometimes when we're not aware we don't want to think about it, but we don't think about it. Another way of looking at them is somebody else wrote about them called the unthought known. Sometimes we know something, but we just haven't thought about it. We've not found words for it from childhood. So we know something's wrong, we just turn away from it. They're not all deeply repressed Freudian impressions. Some of them are something we know, you feel it in your body, but you haven't got words for it. And they carry on in the background. And sometimes it means we behave in ways that we and others don't understand. I've had people saying, I can't understand that person. They went on a climate talk 5 years ago, they went on a climate march, and they've just had 10 kids. You have, well, don't they know what's going on? They know we've got to cut. So you have all these kind of ambivalences and weird feelings, and they can be or become pathological and lead to maladaptive or self-destructive behavior. And I would say Trump is a case history in many, many layers of psychological defenses, completely unaware of what's going on in his world. He's got lack of self-awareness. He's got lack of awareness and impact on others, etc. So some of the key ones are negation, denial, disavowal. You come across these all the time. Different forms and ways of saying it's not happening, it's not true. Disavowal being the most prevalent one in society, which is we all kind of know, but we all prefer not to know at the same time. Distancing, it's over there. Splitting, it's all bad, it's their fault. Intellectualization, oh, that's really interesting. Did you see that chart today, that graph, that data? Ambivalence, I'd like to change, I wish I could, but I can't. I want to do this, but I don't want to do that because we live with these. Apathy, don't want to engage, there's no point. Doomism, we're all doomed anyway. And there can be maladaptive and unhealthy optimism, otherwise known as hopium. And then, of course, we've got lots of cognitive biases, loads of them, cognitive dissonance, little shortcuts in thinking, group in bias, likability bias, credibility bias, you name it, they're all there. There's around 150 cognitive biases and around 45 or so psychological defenses. So I wonder we're thinking about difficult stuff at all. And the one that we're most encountering, of course, is in widespread society and the media. Just as you mentioned, Stuart, things haven't been talked about on the BBC. There's a socially constructed silence, which is a collective defense, which is let's not talk about it. It's difficult to talk about it. Let's not upset people. Let's not give them the bad news. So don't talk about it. And of course, if you're not talking about it, the general public aren't thinking about it. And it sends a message that everything will be okay. It's a social soothing process. So we're all, that's the world we're living in. That's the water we're swimming in. And that's the water we also experience ourselves. And I can regularly experience that as a social constructed silence. I go somewhere and I think, I can't believe they're not talking about this. And I go somewhere and I recognize that the social constructed silence is so huge, I can't open my mouth about something. Friends and family, as an example, for many people, and activists often experience this. So let's bring us back to the work that reconnects. So what is it about this work that reconnects that can help us here in overcoming some of these difficulties in facing it? The assumptions are that the earth is alive, it's a resource and it's life and it's our larger body. So that the assumption is that we need to reconnect with all of us, all parts of us, including the earth. Our true nature is far more ancient and encompassing the separate self. And of course, neoliberalism and the industrial growth society wants us to feel individual in so many ways. I begin to sound like a conspiracy theorist once I get on this, and of course, there's plenty of those to jump on. But our true nature is far more ancient and encompassing. We are born. It's our birthright to be in nature. The air that we breathe is just the right air for us. The water we drink or used to drink was just the right water for our bodies. It's a birthright that we are part of this earth, just like it's the birthright of any plant, any animal. Our experience of moral pain springs from the interconnectedness with all beings, including humans of all cultures. And this also, our experience of pain from this can also arise our powers to act on their behalf if they're unable to. And our unblocking occurs when our pain for the world is not only intellectually validated, but also experienced and expressed, despite how hard we try to not do that, understandably. But when we reconnect with life, but we reconnect by willingly enduring pain, the mind retrieves its natural clarity. That horrible fuzzy grey square stops that. It loses that sense. We become crystal clear about what needs to be done and what our role and our collective role, more importantly, is. People often say, what's mine to do? And I say, no, what's ours to do? Because that's really where it needs to be. And so the experience of reconnection with the earth community, human and other than human, arouses our desire to act. When we care about something, it re-triggers and reminds us of our desire to act. And collective liberation within the species is essential to the larger web of life, planetary life. If we continue to live very separately and think we're separate and better than, we will not enable the flourishing web of life. So those are the core assumptions. I'll stop there because I've rattled, and let's see if anyone's got any observations they just want to share or questions they want to ask.
I have one thought, Linda, which comes from several of the presentations that we've had, which is that anything connected with nature brings out far more volunteers than any other activity. They're all desperate to get back in touch, whether it be you're planting trees or you're building a nature reserve or you're just setting up allotments, but that seems to be bringing out people by the hordes. So what you say about connecting to planetary life does indeed get borne out by volunteering.
Oh, that's lovely to hear, Graham. Really lovely. Any other thoughts or reflections, questions?
I thought you didn't go deeply enough into how much we are connected with the earth, the planet, and nature. And my background is medicine. I was an intensive care consultant for many years. But recently I've been learning about how intimately we are part of nature.
Yeah.
A lot of our sort of DNA derives from viruses, bacteria. We've grown up with these organisms. Some are kind to us and some are not so kind to us. We've evolved to hang on to the ones which are kind to us, and our immune system to fight off the ones which aren't being kind to us. So we have actually evolved. And you saying the water is just right for us, we've evolved to be just right for the water. I think would be a fair way of putting things.
Yeah.
And the environment which we've evolved in over millions of years has affected how evolution has taken place. And we just happen to have come good in a very nice, stable part of Earth's history. And currently we are wrecking it.
Absolutely, and beautifully put. And so I love. I quite agree with your reframe. I quite agree with that. The planet isn't there to serve us, but we've come to think that it is there to serve us. And just as I didn't know you were a former consultant, I'm a former nurse and a paediatric nurse many eons ago. One thing I would also add
not Great Ormond Street, I hope.
No, Westminster Children's.
Excellent.
But originally French here in Bristol. But one of the aspects of this is, I mean, if you think of our own bodies, N. Catherine Hales, who's a very well-known writer on literary critic on AI and bacteria and all sorts of things. She's written a book called From AI to Bacteria, or Bacteria to AI. She's in her 90s now, but she had she's this amazing podcast of her out there. I can put her name in the end. And she and many other scientists would say that actually we have 10 up between the amounts vary, but people say between 4 and 10 times more non-human cells in our bodies than we have human cells. Gut microbiome is just one example.
Yes.
So we have viruses, we have fungi, we have all sorts of animal life. We are an ecosystem in our own right, and we're part of a wider ecosystem too. Lovely. So I'm going to come back to the slides unless there's any other point anybody would like to make. All right. Oh, what am I doing there? Do that. Share. There we go. So coming back to this, so active hope, you probably heard, often people hear about Work That Reconnects and they say, well, what's active hope, and is there a difference? What's active hope and what's the Work That Reconnects? And active hope is actually, it's actually the name of a book that Joanna wrote with Chris Johnston, who himself is a former doctor, and it's a set of practices that use the Work That Reconnects ideas. And in itself, it's a definition of what it is. So often the terms are interchangeable. People say, I'm doing a Work That Reconnects workshop. Some will say I'm doing an active hope workshop. So they've become more or less indistinguishable. So when we think about the word hope, it's got two different meanings. There's hopefulness, which is I hope and I believe it's likely to happen. But often that relies on us deciding that it's that we believe in something before we commit ourselves. You know, I believe it's likely to happen. I hope hope it's going to happen. And sometimes we just wait for it. That it's sort of like a passive. I'm waiting for that to happen, or I hope it's going to happen. Otherwise, I won't do it. And we can easily be deterred when we meet obstacles. This isn't everyone's definition. There are hundreds of definitions and interpretations of hope from some of the great philosophers in the world, including, you know, people like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, so many incredible people. So these are not by any means at all dictionary specific or person specific. These are just a general view from Joanna and Chris. And then there's desire, is I know deeply what I hope for, and even though I'm uncertain about the outcome, I'll commit anyway. So it's a bit like if you had an ailing child and someone said it was the child was in the last, you know, just unable to help them. You wouldn't say, well, I hope it's going to happen that we can cure this. You'd say, well, I really desire for them to recover, so I'm going to go and find some cures. And I don't care if they work or not. I'm going to do all I can. So the desire part is rooted in courage and imagination. And these two aspects of hope then also lead us then to thinking about what does that look like in real life. Well, passive hope is waiting for someone to bring about what we hope for. And active hope is about becoming active participants in bringing about what we hope for, even if we're not certain of the outcome. And of course, who is certain of any outcome at the moment? And we never really were certain. We just had things in our life that we put in place to make us think that there's certainty, like a diary, like we booked a concert. We're sure we're going to go there. You know, we don't use God willing in our greetings to people. I'll see you next week, God willing. We don't use those kind of things in some cultures. So we assume that things are going to happen. So what does the work that reconnects? What are the tools and resources that we can draw upon? Well, there's a lot of work in pairs and small groups and large groups. And at this stage, I should just say as well that I use Work That Reconnects all the time without naming that I'm doing it. If I'm running a leadership offsite, where it's often framed in a Work That Reconnects way, and I don't say today we're going to do Work That Reconnects. It's woven into all of my trainings, all of my listening circles, and all of those kind of things. It's often involves nature-connected practices and rituals because of that need to reconnect. And as Graham said, it attracts a lot more people when we do that. It also invites in and includes looking at our relationship with time and our ancestors, both past and future. So there's a lot of wonderful work done around deep time and seeing ourselves as just part of this massive, massive, massive journey. And we're just a tiny speck in that journey of the world, of the planet, of the solar systems. It often involves things like meditation, poetry, and prose because they have a way to help us to access our feelings differently than perhaps other forms, and often music and art and things like that. So for that reason, it's accessible to a very, very wide range of people. It involves journaling. You know, we can do exercise on journaling. There's a workshop I do where we spend an hour on drawing things and sharing our drawings. And I never would have done that before as a leadership coach. It wouldn't have occurred to me to bring these practices in when I was in the world of business as usual growth. It does include mind-body work, and everything we're doing really is mind-body work. We don't necessarily name it as that. Everything we are doing every day is mind-body work when we're together with other people and we're listening and we're sharing. But it also does include trauma work, but of course that is context and facilitator skill dependent. We don't invite people into traumatic spaces or conversations without making sure that people are grounded and there's competence in whoever's leading that work. It also includes anti-oppression and inclusion work. How can we not think of those things when we're thinking about reconnecting to the larger than me selves that are out there? And there are lots of leadership and inner development ideas and practices that are part of the Work That Reconnects. So that sounds like a mishmash, and it is, because but there are some core things that can be used reliably time and time again by any of you here to frame your meetings, to frame your council meetings, to frame your community meetings, to frame your activist group meetings. They're very simple practices. And the more you read about it, the more you can begin to apply some of the little extras. So the spiral is built around, there's something called the spiral of the Work That Reconnects. This is the fundamental core of the Work That Reconnects practices and active hope ideas, which is we start with gratitude. And we start with gratitude because like a dandelion has strong roots. It will root us in our experience. It will root us in what is good. It'll help us to withstand difficult times. You can cut down a dandelion, but it'll grow again because the roots are strong. You can only it's interesting how many garden shops, where they call them garden shops, they're plastic centres really, aren't they? Just sell plastic tat. But how many of them, and when they sell weed killers, they have a picture of the dandelion on the front. It's a kind of universal thing for weed killers. It's one of the most beautiful, resilient plants. It's one of the first foods for bees of the season. It's an incredible plant, and yet, you know, this society has got rid of it. So if we ground ourselves in gratitude, that gives us strong roots in which to begin to look at our pain in a different way, and we can then honor our pain for the world, our pain for what's happening, our pain for what our future generations, for the other life forms on the world, for the life we thought we'd have, all of that. Then we can honor the difficult feelings that we've been working so hard to push away. And when we can do that, that actually begins to open up new perspectives. We can get that clarity. We can see things differently with new eyes. We might see them through old eyes, through ancient eyes. What would our ancestors have wanted and hoped for? And when we do this, we can then go forth. And I rather love the dandelion, as you might have seen. I've got a dandelion poster on my back wall, and it shows that actually, as this does, that the dandelion has the sun and the moon and the stars all in the same life cycle of that dandelion. You've got the yellow flower, you've got the white seedlings, and then you've got them going forth like the stars. And that's a more business-like way of doing it. If I'm working with corporates, sometimes they might not appreciate a flower. So we tune our message for whoever I'm working with. I worked with a group of barristers, and I showed them this. I showed them the first one, and then I showed them this, and I said, "Which do you more drawn to?" And it was a split in the room. They said, "Oh, we like this one. It's simpler to look at. The other's a bit woo-woo," and others like the woo-woo. So we start from gratitude. We honor our pain, and we see with new and ancient eyes. So the first thing is something, somewhere, or someone, or anywhere that makes me grateful to be alive. And I'm just wondering now if we could maybe invite people into groups for just 5 minutes. Graham, is that possible?
Yeah, sure. I think you have all the ability to do that.
I have the power, do I? Okay.
So, no.
Have I got? I haven't. Probably need to be a co-host.
Okay, let me just do that.
And these are called sentence starters. And rather than ask questions, you can ask questions in breakouts in these things, but we normally give people a sentence starter. Did you have a question there, Penny?
Yeah, while you were talking, I was just thinking that something came up for me around honoring our pain, and owning our pain, and recognizing how that might be different. And yeah, I have a lack of clarity around that.
Yeah, lovely. Well, we're going to do a little exercise on that in a moment as we've opted for the interactive thing. Thank you. So breakout rooms. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to I'll go into a room with someone. And what I'm going to do is just invite you. Actually, no, that looks like we're even. How come I've got an even number?
Well, it depends on whether Andrew is in a position to
Oh,
join.
yes. And Andrew, are you coming in, Andrew? Yeah. So I've got Andrew and Stuart. I've got Jackie and Mike. I've got Penny and Stella. Oh, I haven't got Graham. So Graham, you and I will stay in this room if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the question I'm just going to ask you to think about, or the sentence starter, is something, somewhere, or someone that makes me glad to be alive. And I'm just going to ask you to take turns and have just 1 or 2 minutes, 2 minutes each. It's really short, 2 minutes each. Manage the time and then just swap over, and then I'll bring you back. So it really is a very, very quick. It's just a taster. And then we'll come back, and you don't need to tell us what it was, but I'm so we go back to this. So gratitude gives us roots. These are there are very many trees, including the sequoia tree, which is otherwise known as the Canadian redwood, where the roots of the tree are actually on the mostly on the surface, and they don't go very far down, but they go far and wide, and they are only resilient because they connect with roots of other trees. And if you tried to dig them all up, you'd knock all the other trees down, because they look after each other. They feed like all trees do, but they're one of the oldest species of trees in the world, and so their roots support each other. And gratitude reminds us of other things, places, people that we're connected to. And that gives us roots to deal with difficult things. And Robin Wall Kimmerer, who's written a beautiful book, one of many books, called Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge and the Teaching of Plants, gives us a lovely way of looking at this too, which is paying attention is a form of reciprocity with the living world. Receiving the gifts with open hearts, open eyes and open heart. What it helps us to do when we're looking at gratitude, we're not saying to someone or ourselves, you should be grateful for. We're saying, what do I experience gratitude for? It's not a way of, undermining somebody or saying, I'm lucky because I've got this and I feel bad, all those people haven't. It's a different practice. It says, I'm grateful to have this in my life for what it is. And I can honor my pain differently, but I recognize my abundance. I recognize that there is so much out there. You can't take away the smile of a baby. You can't buy a smile of a baby. Well, you probably can when they're a toddler and you give them something shiny, but recognizing abundance rather than scarcity. The economy we live in thrives by creating unmet desires. Buy more, be more, have more, be better than. And so gratitude cultivates an ethic of fullness. But our economy, the current economy we have, needs emptiness. So we are moving away from this economy, as you've probably all seen and experienced. So it's lovely to have gratitude in our lives. And if all you did every morning was start the day saying, what am I grateful to have in my life? You might shift how you approach the day. And anybody that's been fortunate to have coaching will know that many people keep a coaching diary of the things that have gone well that day. Maybe 3 things that have gone well and 1 thing they do differently next time. Because we also know from neurobiology that actually when we focus on what is good, we're more likely to be able to repeat it. If we focus only on what's bad, we're not likely to want to confront it or change it. We need a balance. It's a 5-to-1 balance, actually. Barbara Friedrichsen discovered between criticism and appreciation or gratitude. So the second stage of the spiral is honoring our pain for the world. And so having done the gratitude, as you've said you want to do the workshop, I'm going to invite you back into pairs and going to invite you to think about this and have 5 minutes between the 2 of you. It's brief again. When we come back, I won't be asking you again to share this. If we were doing a half day or full day, we would be processing this a lot more. So I'm inviting you to only go as deeply as you feel able to at this moment. Some of the feelings that come up for me when I contemplate what's happening in the world, in and to our world, are, and if you want a shortcut for that quest, for that sentence starter, just, some of the ways I'm feeling about what's going on. A half day exercise. So some of the feelings that come up are things like, you might have heard of the truth mandala. You might have heard of, well, that's probably one of the most common ones, but walking in nature can bring up feelings. Truth mandala is a beautiful ritual where you gather around a set of objects and you talk to your feelings and you have them witnessed. So we've been very brief here, but you can do some beautiful grief ritual work, and you can get good at grief. You can get good at all those feelings, at articulating them, making them real. And through that side, we know that you get clarity. When you've been able to do that expression of feelings, you get clarity. Again, if any of you have been fortunate enough to have counselling in your life that's been effective for you, you will know that you've come out of some of those things getting absolute clarity because you found a way to communicate how you feel. And it takes at least 2 minds to think a person's most difficult thoughts. At least 2 minds. Thomas Ogden, the American psychoanalyst, said that it takes at least, he said it takes 2 minds to think about a person's most difficult thoughts. And I add, it takes at least 2 minds. And other questions we often do, we do things like what I find most hard about my feelings, and we can use all sorts of different questions to honor our pain for the world and different exercises. So that's just a taster there. So the other side of the pain for the world is that actually our sorrow is in equal measure love. We only really mourn what we deeply care for. It connects us to the fact that this something is really important and we care about it. If we talk about fear, we're showing the trust and the courage it takes to speak fear in a fear-phobic society. If we talk about anger and we express that, it's got at its source our passion for justice. Somebody wrote an article in a magazine, Euronews, I think, saying that, or one of the mainstream papers, that it was anger that was fueling activists. And I thought, well, you've got an awful lot of people very wrong here. Yes, the anger is what you see. What they're expressing is love and passion for justice, expressing justice. And if we're feeling empty, you know, those times when you feel absolutely nothing and you're feeling a bit numb, we don't label that as bad. We say if we're feeling empty, it makes space for new things to arise. If we don't know how to express feelings, when we can make space, that will help. So that's what one of the works that Reconnect's primary aims was to normalize the expression of feeling in a fear-phobic and a feeling-phobic society. It's very interesting in all my work as a leadership coach. If I was working with a group of people I was contracting at the start, maybe a group of leaders on an offsite or something, or leadership development, and I say something like, you know, all feelings are welcome here, all feelings and none are welcome here. And a lot of people would interpret, in the corporate world, would interpret feelings as being bad, as being, oh, you know, oh, she's going to get us go all weepy or something. Feelings, there's a range of feelings. There's joy, there's emotion, there's jealousy, there's pleasure, there's connection, there's all sorts of feelings. And so I also blame the mainstream psychologists for talking about negative and positive feelings. What a nonsense. What an absolute nonsense. We can have negative and positive thoughts. But what a nonsense to say that feelings are negative. We've labeled them negative because we don't like them. And yet they're a source of information, and they're a source of energy, and a source of opportunity for us to recognize them and validate them and say, okay, I want to feel differently, but they weren't negative, but they just were holding me back. But they've been a bridge to something different. So I get really cross when people write about, oh, get rid of your negative feelings. Another key part of the work, I'm just aware of the time, it's just 20 past now, so we won't take too long now. I want to mention the 3 stories of our time, which you might have heard of, and these are common, these come up a lot in climate circles and things like that. 3 stories of our time were defined by Joanna and colleagues as we're living in a set of different stories all the time. We're living with 3 key concurrent stories, and we can kind of choose which story we want to be predominant in our lives and which stories we want to move away from, although we will still have them in our lives, but we choose where we put our energy. So business as usual is the story that tells us just keep going. In an industrialized consumer functioning society where we have what we want when we want it, when we have strawberries on Christmas Day because we can fly them from Kenya, where we can have what we want, you know, any time of the day or night, where growth is good, whatever the cost, all of those sort of stories, where business as usual is where we can see people on the other side of the planet struggling to find a home, struggling to feed, struggling to stay alive, but there's nothing, you know, we can do nothing about it. That's just business as usual. Just keep going. So it's a story that allows us to emotionally numb. It is a story that perpetuates and props up the industrial growth society and the military industrial complex for that point. So it's a story that is not doing us any good. We need some elements of business as usual in the places in which it's unusual. We don't need to just degrow because as a globe, because that's going to impact people who've never even had the chance to grow and, you know, never a chance to feed themselves. So there's different lenses through which we can look through this. And all of the work that Reconnects tries to be very sensitive to global oppression, as does the Climate Psychology Alliance. So just keep going is one story, and that's a story that I can fall into when I want to forget what's going on, and I go out, or I pop on Amazon and I want to buy 5 things and different colors because I like them, and I think, no, you're just getting sucked into this machine. Stop it, like a magnet. But it soothes me and stops me from keeping in touch with reality, keeps me in that world of aziphia, as I call it. Well, there's the story of the Great Unraveling, which is, oh, it's all catastrophic. It's all gone horribly, horribly wrong. There is nothing we can do about it. Our world is unraveling. Now, that is true in many ways. Anyone that's watched Mark Carney's speech this morning at Davos from yesterday says this is not a transition. This is a rupture. So there is an unraveling going on in the global world order. But it doesn't mean to say we have to live in that story, because it can pull us down into despair and depression. It is happening, but it's not all happening everywhere. There are people like you, amazing groups, community groups, who are doing the opposite of unraveling. You're forming, you're taking action, you're collaborating, you're pulling together, not coming apart. And the Great Turning is a bigger example of that. That's the transformative change, turning away from an industrial growth society to a life-affirming, life-generating society, where we've got chance for transformative change. And again, the Great Turning is the other side of the Great Unraveling. And there are pockets of this happening everywhere. And there's some great stuff happening. You know, just go and watch some movies about local actions and things happening. Look at Mike's project in Hay, Resilience. That's a terrific example of the Great Turning in action. Local people getting together, doing things differently, looking for transformative change. So these are happening everywhere, so we can choose those stories. And we can also be mindful of when the other stories are sucking us in and taking our energy away and taking our resolve away. And when we're sleepwalking into business as usual, as I said, I frequently do, when none of us are perfect, we live in imperfect systems, and the business as usual is just that magnet. It appears most at Christmas in the UK. The frenzy of shopping and the frenzy of food and the supermarket trolleys packed as if we're going to starve if we don't eat 5 meals a day, you know, that kind of thing. But it's just a story we've been sold, and we're in the system. So that's why I can get a bit cross sometimes when people focus so much on individual choice. We are in systems that lock us in and are very hard to move away from. So we're not going to have a chance to do this, but these might be, you know, questions that I'll leave for you, and I'll share some slides. I'll share the text of the slides with you. Which stories help you to see or re-see? Business as usual, the Great Unraveling and the Great Turning. Might be worth a conversation with your groups and even in your own home, which are these stories, because when you see things differently, you can see with them new and ancient eyes. Again, there are a lot of rituals that we can do with new and ancient eyes. There's some beautiful deep time walks. There's some lovely processes and practices. I work with a leadership team, and every board meeting they have now, the senior leadership team and the board actually, but every meeting they have, whether it's the SLT or the board, they light a candle. And this is increasing practice. It's a very old practice, and it's called the 7th generation principle. You light a candle for the generations that have been and the generations that will come. And the focus often in the meeting is, how does this decision we're making today affect 7 generations down the line? That's from Indigenous practices. And there's, you know, we need to be careful with Indigenous work that we don't appropriate it and strip them of stuff, take away stuff that they've had to put in place to deal with what we've done to them. So those things can be done with real sensitivity and care. So there's loads and loads of exercises around new and ancient eyes. Just so many. And the book that is great to get for these exercises, I'll share with you at the end, is Coming Back to Life. And that was written by Molly Brown and Joanna Macy. And then I'm not going to go into these, but there are various dimensions of the Great Turning, and we can use any of them. We can get into activism. We can get into setting up new systems and structures, and we can have a massive shift, a fundamental spiritual shift. So there are aspects of this that we can all play a part in. So even if we're just signing petitions or gluing ourselves somewhere, or we're setting up a whole community, they're all parts we can play in the Great Turning. So some resources, we've got the Climate Psychology Alliance. There's loads of stuff on the Climate Psychology Alliance website. We do talks. I'm on the board there. You can contact me and say, you know, I want to talk for my organization. Please share the work that this is doing. You know, we do loads of stuff for free. We want to get more into corporates as well, to talk to people about some of these really critical stuff around climate emotions. We run listening circles. We run training to how to run listening circles. I look after listening circle training for the CPA. We run parent and youth circles. We also have a wonderful pool of counsellors and psychotherapists and psychologists that offer one-to-one emotional support to anybody in the general public. A lot of people think climate psychology is just about anxiety. It's far wider than that, as you've probably gathered from our conversation. The Work That Reconnects itself, there's a website called Work That Reconnects. It's a place where practitioners like me meet. There are trainings, there are events, there's loads of reading, loads of exercises. It's a treasure trove. And there's me, I'm a resource, both in my CPA hat and also my own work. So I do one-to-one coaching, I do leadership development in a climate focused way. I help people to run assemblies and teach assembly skills, all that kind of stuff. I do all sorts of workshops. I've got 35 years in the field of leadership and organisation development. So there are those. And if you're interested in a full day of this, there's a QR code, and you can that'll take you to the website to have a look at it. If you take a photo of that, it's called Roots of Resilience. It's a full day, and it's on February the 20th online, where I go through this in a lot more depth, and we do some other exercises around resilience too. As you mentioned, tonight, Penny, I think you mentioned tonight, I'm doing a talk for the Climate Emergency Centre Network. There'll be some of this in there, but not as much. It's much more focused on some of the climate psychology, the unconscious processes, and what it is we need now. Most particularly back to, you know, how do we engage people at things like emergency centre briefings? How do we hold meetings so that people are well held and received? So it's called Climate Psychology, Making Sense of Our Inner Worlds. So that's a QR code for that. And then finally, 4 lovely books, Active Hope and Coming Back to Life. Active Hope is Joanna Macy's book, which explains the principles of it. Get the yellow edition if you're going to buy it, because there's a red edition, which is older, red cover. So this yellow, creamy coloured one is the newer one. Coming Back to Life is a bit like a workbook for anyone that wants to use this stuff. You don't need to go on a course. You can, and it's great if you experience it a few times yourself, but you can run some of these things with it. It's beautiful, beautiful book. There's my book, which I co-edited, called Holding the Hope, and it's a series of essays from practitioners, psychologists, community psychologists, coaches. Chris Johnson from Active Hope wrote a chapter for us. We've got chapters about working with young people. So it's really for practitioners of any kind. And then there's Braiding Sweetgrass. It's a love song to nature, I call it, from Robin Wall Kimmerer. So I'll share these slides with Graham afterwards. And just to leave you with this poem, because I've rattled through and you've given me very attentive. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Thank you, everybody. Anybody like to say a word as a final parting? Just a word of how you're feeling leaving this space today, as you leave this space today.
I have a question.
Inspired.
Thank you, Stella.
I've got a parish.
Graham, a question.
I've got a parish council meeting this evening. Do you record the sessions? Can I pick up on it afterwards?
Yes, it will be recorded.
Okay, thank you.
Could you put up the QR code for it again?
Yes, I will.
I think I signed up for it, but I'm not sure.
There we go. Let's go back to that. There you go. Can you see that okay?
Yeah. Great.
Everyone got
Thanks.
that if they want it? Everyone done? Okay, lovely.
Well,
Any
Linda,
other-
let me just say
any
thank
other-
you so much for an exciting and yet again the thought-provoking session. Very interesting.
Great. Thank you. Any other final words anyone wants to say? No pressure to, but if there's anything you want to just leave with. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Stella.
Thank you.
Thanks,
So
thanks,
thank
Stuart.
you. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Mike.
much, Linda. And I'll be in touch.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Graham, for your wonderful holding of this space, and Stuart too, but your wonderful holding of this space and the platform that you provide for people to share their work, and the welcome that you always give us, and the amount of care you put into these sessions and making sure they happen for your community. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Look forward to seeing you all again next time. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Cheerio.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Graham.